You're listening to Boobies and Noobies, brought to you by the Frolic Podcast Network. Today's podcast is brought to you by Owner of a Broken Heart, the first book in the Richardson Sisters series by Cheris Hodges. This is the first book in a new series about four sisters who own a historic B&B in Charleston, South Carolina. # travel goals. Nina Richardson is a sports writer, forced to take a time out after a social media blow-up and a painful rejection by her boyfriend. When she heads home to Charleston, she finds instant attraction with the newest employee in her family's B&B, Clinton Jefferson, who used to work for her family's biggest rival. Ugh, of course you did, Clinton. He's got plans for upgrades and modernization and ideas for a future with Nina, too, if they can overcome the trust issues between and around them, that is. Friends, if you like contemporary romances featuring close, supportive families who aren't afraid to offer a swift kick in the butt when needed, you will love this series. Owner of a Broken Heart by Cheris Hodges is out now and available wherever books are sold. I'm already counting down the days until the next book in the series drops. But for now, back to the show. Welcome to Boobies and Noobies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today I'm thrilled to welcome LA writer, director, and all-around badass bitch Black Katniss Everdeen, Charia Rose.
It's me.
Cue air horn.
My vocal air horn is actually my most hireable skill. It is on my resume.
Well, there you go. That's good. It should be there. I mean, that's the things that people should put on their resumes, but don't. Yeah. I mean, and we're not even talking about if you're an actor. Like, I feel like if you're applying for a job in sales, I want to know that you can do an air horn with your voice.
I think it would be a great call to action.
Yeah.
For everyone in the warehouse.
And you know what? A great talking point, too. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've gone in for, like, a job interview and just based off of, like, something, like, the bag I was carrying or, like, the sunglasses I was wearing, somebody was like, oh, how interesting, da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, now we have something to talk about.
Right. And now you have to hire me.
Yeah.
You've taken too much interest in me to not hire me.
Oh, it's so worth it. So worth it. Okay, so Black Katniss Everdeen.
Do.
Now, if anybody's very curious about Charia's obsession with Hunger Games, we do have some wonderful bonus content coming to our Patreon page, which is my cue to tell you, support us on Patreon if you so choose, because we've got all sorts of fun things happening over there. Bonus clips from shows as well as giveaways, and of course you get a sneak peek of next month's episodes earlier than everybody else. I know, as if that's not enough. Now, Shari and I go way back to the cold, windy city of Chicago, Illinois.
It's been a minute. We've actually known each other for a while.
Yeah, well, because I moved to Chicago in 2014, and I don't know if we met that first year or if it was the second year, but I think it was during the web series class, maybe, or it was before that.
Did you do VMons 2014 or was it 2015?
It was 2015, and then I did the other Eve Ensler play,
right?
A memory, a monologue, a rant, and a prayer.
Yes, which is so funny because my time hop has been all VMons content because it's February.
I know, but yeah, it's for sure been like at least 5-ish years. Yeah, so, if you can't tell, we're feminists. And we're also performers.
We've been doing this shit for a very long time.
Yeah, God, so good. But now we're both here in LA and making, those dreams come true-ish.
Working on it. Every day it's
in progress.
Yes.
In progress. That's like if I could put, like, on Facebook how you can, like, are people even on Facebook anymore? I mean, I am, but... on Facebook how you can do like your relationship status is like, and then I love that they added like it's complicated. I'm like, I just want like it to be a status update for like not my relationship, but just like me as a human, and I'll be like maybe or like in progress. Like it's all gonna end in a question mark.
Yes,
I feel like that's at least on my status. That's how it's going.
You should direct message Mr. Zuckerberg and see if we can add that feature.
I don't know if that's at the top of my to-do list.
I'm sure he's just waiting.
Yeah, well, and you know what? Facebook knows me too well. The advertising always gets me. So chances are he isn't even listening to this podcast and will somehow know that it's on my mind.
It's the algorithm.
Yeah, they're out to get us. You've been in LA about the same amount of time as I have. Yeah, it's been like
3 years.
Yeah, I'm going on. April will mark my 4th year. Yeah. So, oh boy, yikes.
It feels like it's been 10.
Yeah, because I don't know how it is for people living in other places in the world, but I know that when you live in LA, it's like dog years, where it's like 1 year that you're actually here is really like 3 or 4 years.
Yes.
Of emotions.
Yeah, especially because if you can make it past a year and you haven't moved away.
You've got it. You're done.
Yeah.
That's an accomplishment. Yeah, so the fact that April 2020 will mark the end of like my 4th year here. I will have been here for 4 complete years. I'm like, that's good. Like maybe that's it. Maybe
that's enough.
Maybe more, but like maybe I feel like that is enough.
Yeah. Like I don't want to live here full time more than like 10 years.
Oof.
Max. And that's a lot.
That's like 50.
I know.
Oh gosh. Again, we're in progress.
Yes.
Ish. So that relationship stands with LA as well. We met because we were both, acting together, and then we actually took a writing class together. One in which I also directed Charia in a web series. But Charia is an incredible artist who's always, I feel like you have your hands in so many projects at all times. Writing, directing, assistant directing, acting. I mean, voguing in front of the microphone,
Stop.
So you really are. You're such a hard worker, and like always, you live in the LA life, hustling one day at a time.
Yeah, I have to, or else I'll die.
Yeah. No, are you an Aries?
No.
Okay.
My Venus is an Aries. I'm a Taurus.
Okay, I'm an Aries, and I feel like, so you're right after my birthday then. And it's the same way for me too, as I'm like, I need to be doing something. Otherwise I feel guilty for like not doing anything.
Yeah. As I have a Gemini moon in Aquarius rising, so it's like a lot of air. So I'm very restless all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like if I'm at a job, once I hit 9 months, if I can think, I could have been pregnant this whole time and had a baby, it's time for me to go.
Oh my God. That's hysterical.
Like I start to itch at 9 months. I'm like, I have to find a new job. I have to do something
You're like,
new.
Do I have a baby? No. Am I still at this job? Yes. Something needs to change.
Something needs to change. Something's got to give.
Oh God. Yeah. So, what is there anything that you're currently working on that's in the pipeline? Whether it's something you're filming or writing, anything you want to share with us?
Well, I am working on a new short film.
Woohoo!
It's very early stages. We're just working on the script right now. I'm working on the script because I'm writing it.
Yes.
But hoping to direct that this spring, early summer, late spring, hopefully.
Awesome.
And then, just always looking to, get some representation. I'm a writer too, so writing for TV would be amazing. So I'm trying to get my samples and everything done, and just trying to direct more and just make more shit in 2020.
Yeah, I feel like the first couple years I was here, I was trying to go the whole route of like meeting, like going and taking a job even if I didn't really like it, because it would eventually lead somewhere, and like this would lead to this sort of thing. And then I feel like the last couple years I've been doing a lot more freelance, a lot more of like, I just want to make stuff. Like, let me just put some stuff out there, write some stuff, film some stuff, do the podcast, just stuff that at least I feel like I'm putting something out there. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's great that you're doing that you're getting stuff out there, because and there's no right or wrong way. I mean, I don't know how this applies to other fields, but if anybody, anybody in the arts, podcasting, writing, directing, anything, musicians of that nature, like we know there's no ladder to climb. Like it just does, it's like a sideways ladder that you are struggling to hang on to, because it's also hanging off of a building.
Right.
And there's sharks at the bottom. So it's kind of like, well, let's just see if we can exist on this ladder and stay on top of it, and that's good enough.
Yeah, you just have to make your own luck, because that's the thing too with this industry specifically. They try to tell you that there's only one way to work your way up the ladder, and that's...
Lies.
Exactly. It's like you start off in a mailroom, and then you work your way up to being an assistant, and people throw staplers at you, and you're emotionally abused, and it's really weird.
I saw that movie. It's from the 50s.
Right.
It's true. It's like Hollywood, unfortunately, like exists in this whole idea of like what Hollywood has been for like many, many decades, that they're like, well, that's just the way it is, and that's how it's gonna be. And why, and so I'm so thankful for, and we're going to talk about, the amazing author that is Rebekah Weatherspoon and like work like this, but I'm so thankful for the fact that people are creating new shows and opportunities and everything that's just kind of going against all of that. Yeah. So, yeah. Step outside the box, y'all.
Period. Out the dick box.
Yeah, exactly. That box,
The box with dicks in it.
Yeah.
Just burn it.
There's only one. There's just the one box with dicks in it. It's a big box. It's a big box. It doesn't, fit in your cupboard. But, so today, Char and I are going to be discussing the novel Xeni by Rebekah Weatherspoon. Did you pronounce it Xeni, like when you were reading it in your head? Okay, like Jenny, but like with an X.
Because when she said her full name was like Xenia, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
But I also knew somebody growing up whose name was Xenia. So I was like, oh, is it supposed to be Xeni? Oh. But I'm going with Xeni just because that was like my first instinct. Yeah. Granted, my first instincts are wrong a lot. So, but we are going to go, I'm just going to call it Xeni for the sake of this conversation, by Rebekah Weatherspoon. And this is a contemporary marriage of convenience romance published October 2019. It's available on Amazon for $4.99 Kindle edition. And this is actually the second book in a series, kind of. I think I mentioned this to you, Char, when I, chose the book for us to read. It's a standalone romance. It does not need to be read with the book that came before it. However, there is a book published before this one by Rebekah Weatherspoon called Rafe, a Buff Male Nanny. And it was all the rage when it came out. It was on like every top romance of the year list.
Really?
Yeah, it's got this super hot model on the cover. Like, oh God. I mean, they had me at Rafe, a Buff Male Nanny. I was like, that's it. I have to read it. But the only reason I mentioned that that's part of this series is that there are some references made in this story where Xeni is talking to like her group of girlfriends back home. And one of them was the main female character from Rafe. Okay. So now, granted, it's really not a big deal in this story. It's very minor. So, but if you do want to start with Rafe, a buff male nanny, I absolutely recommend it. It's so fun. I mean, that title alone.
Yeah. You had me at Buff Male Nanny.
Right. God, and I'll show you the cover of that book. Like, you see it, you're like, what a snack.
We should adapt that. That sounds like a phenomenal Netflix show.
Oh my God. And you know what? There are so many books we read for the podcast and so many books I read outside of the podcast that I'm like, I would watch this.
That's how I felt when we were reading this book. I was like, oh, this is a movie.
Yeah.
I could see it.
And you know what? It totally could be. And not a good amount of it takes place in LA. There's a little bit of it in LA. So anything that's in LA, I always have a really easy time picturing now. But the bulk of it does take place in like their upstate New York. Yeah. Yeah. Which I'm like, well, that's beautiful. That would be lovely. Yeah. And
it seems like a farm town. You could shoot that in the Midwest.
Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't want to watch a movie too about like two bisexual characters? One is like this hulking, Scotsman, and then one is like the hot black girl that moves there from LA, and she's also a witch. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm in.
Yeah. We need more pegging on our TV screens. More pegging.
Preach that shit. We need more pegging on TV. We need it in books. We need it in real life. We need to talk about it. That's what we need.
Also, the power of having a black woman peg
a giant white man. We are getting ahead of ourselves, but if you are caught by this conversation, you're like, I'm here for it. Just get ready. So before we jump in, I will say that as this is the end of February, this review marks the final installment in our February Black History Month special. Yes! Nice. And of course, all month long, we've been spotlighting amazing Black authors, their amazing Black characters. And even though February's come to a close, please continue to support Black artists and writers and there's so much content out there that's made by people that are not middle-aged white men that I really, really encourage everyone to check out.
It's really so easy, too.
Yeah.
It's like right there. Look at the material.
It's everything that's not in that box of dicks.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big box, you know?
That one really big box.
The big one, the one that doesn't fit in the cabinet. Oh, God. So before we talk about the book and romance itself, I do want to ask you, what does Black History Month mean for you?
It's so funny because I'm really fucked up as a person.
Awesome. Great start.
I post a lot of like really inappropriate Black History Month memes on my Instagram.
Okay. I'm really curious now. Like, do you have like just an example?
I'm like trying to find a way that I could describe it in a way that every audience could understand. There's like...
Are they funny specifically, referencing like Black culture that like maybe wouldn't be knowledge, people with a white wouldn't necessarily recognize that they're not part of that culture?
Yeah, it's like kind of like a niche thing.
Got it.
I think about Black History Month in the sense of how can we just have fun and like uplift Black culture in a way that I feel like everyone's like, it's Black History Month. Like, let's talk about MLK and Malcolm X, which is great.
That's great.
It's important, but also like, I want to laugh.
Yeah.
I want to be reminded of how like creative we are, how funny we are, like how messy we are, and like just do it loudly and have a lot of fun. So I really just think it's a really good excuse.
It's a celebration.
Yeah. I can be Black and ignorant for 28 days. So, and no one can tell me shit.
Oh, no. But this year, it's 29 days.
Baby. Hell yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. No, that's awesome. And I think I'll ask you, because you are, a creator, when you do write or direct or act, is it important to you to, create roles specifically for Black actors and actresses? Or do you kind of go into projects thinking more of like colorblind casting of just like, this could be anybody?
Oh, I think I always create from my own lens and my own experience. So for me, all of my characters are people of color, like just subliminally in my brain.
Yeah.
Like, like this is a Black woman or this is...
No, that's great.
Yeah, it's just kind of how my brain works.
That's like, I like to write for fat women. That's how my brain works.
It's my experience. Like, I don't write from the experience of like a white woman. I also know that white women have a lot of stories that are already in existence. Yeah. Like, they could be sprinkled in the back. But like, But I think it's important to me, but it's also just at the end of the day, like, it's not revolutionary to me because I'm writing what I know.
Right. It's just part of life.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. No, that's great. That's good. Well, I always feel like, when I'm creating something, it's so funny. I'm doing a web series right now, and I think my partner in crime in the series, the first thing we said to each other is, we want it to be like Girls meets Broad City meets Sex in the City, but with more representation and less white people. And that was kind of our goal going into it. Mm-hmm. And, I'm clearly white, but I'm a, larger woman of a certain size. And she's I think, second generation Asian American woman. And so it was really important to us that we're like, well, we want to see people that look and sound and act like us. Yeah. Like, and that doesn't have to be like a caricature either. Like which I think is something that I see a lot plaguing Black characters in movies and TV shows, especially, is like this very stereotyped caricature of what it means to be Black.
Yeah, or it's one of those colorblind casting things where it's like, this was clearly written for a white person, but we're just going to put, like, a Black person in this role. And then the Black people are
or vice versa.
Yeah, and we're like, first of all, Black girls do not go to sleep. This is... Pro tip, Black girls do not just go to sleep without wrapping their hair.
That was in the other book. That was, what I think it was Just One More was another book we read for February. Mm-hmm. And there's like a whole routine about getting her hair ready before bed.
Yes.
Yep.
So, and I loved Scandal. That was my favorite show. But I would have beef with Shonda Rhimes sometimes because Olivia would go to bed with her hair laid. And she would wake up with that. Like, I'm like, no. The edges would be frayed.
Shonda, you know better.
Okay, Shonda. Hey, girl. Hey,
I have to tell you, super quick sidebar. At my high school, they're doing, for their musical in the spring, they're doing Ghost, the musical.
Yikes.
Thank you. That's problem number one. Is, first of all, I did know that they made a musical of Ghost a few years ago, but when I saw that they were doing it on Broadway, there were all these like, what do you call it? Not graphics, but like they did magical things, projections with like lighting and sound and everything. And I was like, well, okay, that's not going to work in my high school theater. I can tell you that. Yeah. But secondly, my fabulous 5th grade teacher, who I call Kim now because I'm a grown up and we have coffee sometimes, Kim, her daughter is a junior in high school, attending this high school, and she was cast as the Whoopi Goldberg part.
I hate where this is going.
And they are, very white bread, from Pennsylvania. And, but so she put on Facebook, she's like, I don't know what to do with this, like, because I don't think it's appropriate. And it's not like they were recreating the role, like taking the role and just kind of like adapting it, for the cast that they have. Because I grew up in a very predominantly white and Asian population. So I'm just like, I'm very, very interested, and the girl who was offered the role feels uncomfortable because she's like, Mom, there are lines in this show where I'm literally like making fun of people for being white, which like I do all the time, but I don't, that's clearly, if anybody's seen Ghosts, they know that that's not the character. It's Whoopi Goldberg. Right. So I'm just like, oh my God, what an inappropriate choice of show. First of all, for high school. Yeah. Secondly, for a very, very white high school.
Theater is really, I think about that a lot too, as someone who came up through musical theater and having my own experiences. Yeah. Thinking about as an adult, I can be like, oh, that was a super racist thing that happened to me while growing up. Because when you're in high school, you're like, I just want the role.
You're just like, I just want to be in the show.
Right. And then you grow up and you're like, no, y'all were doing brownface. That's crazy. No. So my freshman year, we did West Side Story.
Oh, okay. No, that was the first thing I thought of when you said brown face.
Yep. West Side Story. Everybody got spray tans.
Yes.
It was very, very bad.
I did tech crew for a youth production of West Side Story, and they for sure did spray tans. Kids looked fucking orange.
Yeah, they were orange.
Yeah, it was creepy, and of course had like these terrible accents where it'd be like, under the highway. I'm like, so you bad. Need to stop.
And then they had one Mexican kid in the cast who I was in love with for middle and high school. Don't want to talk about it. And he was a jet. He wasn't even a shark.
I can't.
I was like, if y'all are going to be racist, at least be racist correctly.
In fact, now that I think about it, be racist correctly. You're right, though. That is true. But now that I think about it, there were 2 casts of this production of West Side Story. And in one cast, the Maria and Anita were both very white, very blonde. And in the other cast, they were both the tan brunette girls, and they put them together, like, we have to keep you guys together as a set, your package deal.
A set. I'm weak.
God, it's amazing.
But yeah, theater it's weird like that, specifically in the high school space, because they're just kids and you want to just do the art that you love. Yeah. But because I'm thinking a lot about when people can afford to do Hamilton, what the fuck is that going to look like?
Oh no. Well, and you know what? It's 2020. I will say that I feel like kids today's are, on the one hand, we talk about, oh my God, they're all so obsessed with like technology and like they don't know how to communicate. On the other hand, because of the abundance of technology and the fact that they are exposing themselves to what's going on, I think they're also a lot more informed. Yeah. And that I do have hopes that with stuff like this happening, they can recognize it as a problem, maybe more than like we did when we were in high school. So, that's my hope for the future.
Yeah, but white high schools, please do not do In the Heights. Don't do Porgy and Bess. Don't do maybe Hairspray if you have enough. We wanted to do Hairspray. Yeah, because I went to like a kind of diverse high school. Okay. It was mostly white people, but it was also like a lot of a big Asian population. Yeah, as well. And so we were like, well, we could do Hairspray. You just have to like make it just brown people in general. Yeah, they were like,
that was my high school drama teacher talked about doing Hairspray, and he's like, well, instead of us calling it Negro Day, we'll call it Ethnic Day. And I was like, I'm sorry, you cannot throw everyone that's a minority in one group of the cast.
Yeah, you're right. That would have been a really bad look.
Oh, God. Thankfully, it didn't happen.
Thank God.
I think that year they did You're in Town instead. let me give everyone the brief Amazon synopsis. Well, I'll say not so brief Amazon synopsis.
Pretty long.
But very detailed nonetheless. So this is the synopsis for Xeni by Rebekah Weatherspoon. She just wanted to claim her inheritance. What she got was a husband. I hate when that happens, don't you? God, you know, every time I go to claim my inheritance and they're like, oh, you got to marry like this hot Scot.
God damn it.
God, it's the worst.
Hate that for you.
Xeni Everly Wilkins has 10 days to clean out her recently departed aunt's massive colonial in upstate New York. With the feud between her mom and her sisters still raging, even in death, she knows this will be no easy task. But when the will is read, Xeni quickly discovers the decades-old drama between the former R&B singers is just the tip of the iceberg. The secrets, lies, and crap ton of cash spilled on her lawyer's conference room table all come with terms and conditions. Xeni must marry before she can claim the estate that will set her up for life, and her aunt has just the groom in mind. The ruggedly handsome and deliciously thick Scotsman, thick, mind you, with 2 C's. Thick Scotsman, who showed up at her aunt's memorial, bagpipes at the ready. I just can't.
Who writes the synopsises?
I don't know. Wouldn't that be a great job, though?
I would like it.
I actually had a friend who just applied for a job with Netflix to be the person that writes the synopses for the kids' shows and movies for Netflix. I was like, that sounds awesome. When his dear friend and mentor, Sable Everly, passed away, Mason McEnroy knew she would leave a sizable hole in his heart. He never imagined she'd leave him more than enough money to settle the debt that's keeping him from returning home to Scotland. He also never imagined that Sable would use her dying breaths to play matchmaker. Oh, he should have known. Trapping Mason and her beautiful niece in a marriage scheme that comes with more complications than either of them need. With no choice but to say I do, the unlikely pair try to make the best of a messy situation. They had no plans to actually fall in love. And here's a little side note. This is a standalone romance that can be read along with Rafe, a buff male nanny, as it should be. It features a woman sick to death of her family shit and a plus-size Scotsman who just wants to make sweet, sweet music and love. Yeah, buddy. Okay, so before reading Xeni, and obviously you haven't read Rafe, the buff male nanny, although clearly you're going to, had you read any romance before?
I mean, yes, but I don't think as an adult. Not like strictly.
So like young adult romance, or like you were like snatching like romance off the shelves when you were 12?
I read a lot of YA romance.
Okay, cool.
I did sneak a couple of my aunt's grown-up erotica novels when I was a kid.
Do you remember some like saucy covers? Is that what caught your eye?
I can't. There's one that left a very big impact on me, and I cannot remember the title.
Oh my gosh! If you do though, I want to know. Do you remember it at all? Like, can you describe the plot?
Oh God, I was like 14. I can like almost picture the cover, but I can't. I'm going to do a deep dive.
Okay.
Into my
I hope you do. Yeah.
I'm going to inception my brain and try to come up with it.
Yes. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, mostly YA.
Okay, so mostly YA. Is there a reason as an adult maybe you hadn't, picked up a romance before? Like, did you have any specific thoughts about romance, or it just hadn't really crossed your mind?
I don't think it really crossed my mind. I mean, ultimately, even when I'm writing my own stuff, I'm very much a drama person.
Okay.
So I like dark, twisted shit. But when I was reading this, I just couldn't, and maybe this is like a longer conversation for later in the podcast, but I wrote a lot of fan fiction when I was growing up. I still write some fan fiction. And so when I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is just a fanfic.
I love it.
It's just fan fiction.
Well, and that makes sense because honestly, I'm not sure if you know this, but you might because you do write fanfic, that there's definitely fanfic out there that's been, turned into and published as romance, both as young adult and, adult
50
romance.
Shades. 50 Shades is based off of Twilight.
Yeah. And then there was one that I just watched the shitty Netflix movie version of it that actually could have been good but wasn't. After, did you ever see that or read that?
Mm-mm.
So that apparently was like fan fiction too. Or no, maybe I'm getting this wrong. I think it was Wattpad. It was like a Wattpad story, and which I don't know enough about, and I plan to change that because my good friend Andrea, who runs the Shelf Love podcast, another romance review podcast, she just did an interview on a recent episode about Wattpad. and I don't know enough about it. So I am intrigued to learn more, but that one after was another one, and they have a bad Netflix movie, and I totally watched it. And I watched the whole thing, and the whole time I was like yelling at the TV, like, girl, no, what are you doing?
Yeah, it can get really dark, but I will say, like, some of the greatest writing I have ever read has been fan fiction.
Yeah.
There is one story that I can only revisit once a year.
Okay.
Because I'll read the first line and start crying. Like, it's so phenomenal.
What is it?
It's so this is in the Hunger Games.
Oh no.
Canon.
Go figure that the badass bitch Black Katniss Everdeen, Charia Rose,
she
has
writes Hunger Games fanfiction. But this one, it was just like Peeta is sick.
Oh no.
And it's just like him deteriorating. Like, I will send it to you.
Oh my god.
Please share it with the community. I just want everyone to
No, I totally will. We did an episode, one of our Sexy Spotlight episodes we did, where it's not a romance review. We talk about a topic in the romance community. And we actually had Abby on from DePaul. Do you remember Abby Bokun?
Yes, I do.
Okay. We had Abby on from DePaul, and we did a episode all about fan fiction, because she, like you, is an avid fan fiction reader and writer. And so we talked about it, and I feel like I got so schooled on like what the world of fan fiction is.
It's incredible.
It's honestly one of my favorite episodes. If you guys haven't listened to that one of ours, it's probably my favorite Sexy Spotlight episode. And oh my gosh, we actually share some excerpts of specific fanfic, and my favorite was one that was about Mr. Clean.
Yikes.
I say my favorite in the way that it's not good. It's just very
stark,
aggressive.
Yeah. I can only imagine where that went.
Yeah, you know what? Let the possibilities run through your mind. And
fan fiction goes there.
Yeah.
No one asked.
And it went. It did. It went there.
No one asked for it to go that deep, but it does.
Okay, so fan fiction, some young adult romance, and now you're diving into Xeni.
Yes, as an adult now, so it's like, oh, okay,
yeah.
I know what's happening.
And I was so excited that when Char came into my apartment to record, I asked her, I was like, did you like the book? And she said, yeah, I thought it was really cute.
Yeah, I was like, it's so, like, pure, not like pure in the sense of, like,
yeah,
virginity, which isn't a thing, but just in the sense of like I read so much like dark dramatic stuff, so for it just to be like, oh, okay, like the stakes are just,
it's so funny to me too that you're like, this book was like so pure, because I'm like, there's a pegging scene, there's there's so much, like, but I think you're right in a way too that it is very, they're clearly, both of our main characters are bisexual, both of them are, clearly experienced. But there is like a nice kind of purity to their relationship that's kind of like, we come from like, we have, what do you call it? Not we have shadows like in our past. We have baggage.
Yeah.
Like they both have baggage. They both have family issues and drama that when they come together, it's just kind of like, let's just be together and let's just have this be nice and fun, and it doesn't have to go anywhere. But
because I think what I liked about it a lot too, which I think a lot of works do bad job with, is that they were actually adults about their trauma. Like they were willing to be communicative with each other.
Oh,
like,
and isn't that open. Sexy?
Yeah, I'm like, wow. Like they're just telling each, like, we didn't have to wait until the end of the book for them to be like, I have feelings for you. I was like, what?
It's so interesting because I mentioned the book that we read earlier this month, Just One More. Mm-hmm. And yes, they do a wonderful job of talking about her wrapping her hair before bed. However, that was one of the stories that one of the complaints that we had during our review was that there wasn't much tension. Like there wasn't a lot of complication to that story, which kind of, makes it feel less worth it at the end, I guess. Mm-hmm. And this one is interesting because at the same time, we don't have that much tension or complication in this story. They clearly each have their own family drama going on. Spoiler alerts, here it comes. But Xeni's aunt that has died and left her money was actually her birth mother. And when it comes to Mason, he basically owes money to his dad to pay back the wedding that he was supposed to have that, didn't happen. Yeah. And I think there's also some like resentment regarding like his sexuality as well. So they have like their own personal dramas, but when it comes to each other, really the only, problem is that they have to be married for a certain amount of time, and then there's like this looming deadline of, okay, and then we get divorced, and then we go our separate ways. But I mean, we know, once they get married that we're like, well, it's all gonna be okay. Like, it's a romance, So it's so funny though that it's like we read 2 books this, and granted the other one was a novella, it was much shorter, but we did read 2 stories for February that have very similar feelings of just not a lot of conflict, and yet this one works. Like, I do find that this one works a lot more. It's, I guess, what I would call what's the term we talk about when we do screenwriting? We call it like a slice of life. Like, it's less of here's the story and here's what they have to do before the end and here's what's working against them, and more of just like, here are 2 people and here's the life they lead. Yeah. Can they make it work? Like, sort of thing. And you know what? If they can't, they're both going to be fine without each other. Exactly. Which I personally, in romance, I love that. I love the whole idea of like, you don't need someone. Like, you want them, but like you don't need them to like survive. Yeah. So maybe I'm a cynic, maybe I'm a realist.
No, that makes you. I typically too with romance stuff that I read or that I write, specifically in fanfiction, is angst. I'm very I'm really into angst, and this wasn't an angsty romance at all. It was very much like, well, we're here. We might as well fuck.
And you know what? They make the best of it, too. Like, when they find out... I do love this. I love that they do this as kind of like a fuck you to everybody. Is when they do find out that, okay, we have to get married to inherit all this money. And before people are thinking like, oh, well, that's nuts. It's a lot of money. Like, it's millions of dollars. And Mason is going to use the money to pay off his debt. And, Xeni can, like, start a whole new life. She doesn't really love her career. And when they decide to get married, they're like, you know what? If we're going to do this, let's do this. Like, let's skip the courthouse and let's have like a fucking party. This is going to be big. I'm going to go get a dress. Like, he's playing his bagpipes. Like, I'm just like, this is great. I love this. I do love that they do that. And then they're like, well, you know what? If we have to be married, we might as well fuck. Like, let's do it, So, yeah, I thought they had like really cool personalities. Like, they were different, but like very similar at the same time, but different enough where you're like, okay, they don't agree on all the same things. They don't have all the same points of view. Like, that's boring to me.
Yeah, very.
What else did you like about the book?
He was very hot, which was great. I love that for me.
I love that they also describe him in the synopsis as a plus-size Scotsman, which I know you don't read like a ton of romance, but I feel like I don't get that description. First of all, we don't get enough plus-size women in romance, but I feel like we never get the description of a plus-size man.
No, they're always like Abercrombie models.
And even if they're like athletes or like it's like a motorcycle romance or something and they're like big guys, they're meant to be tall and muscly. They're never described as being like plus size or he's got a belly or anything like that. And so for him to be described as a plus size Scotsman or, thick with 2 C's, I was like, oh, I love this.
Yeah, I was very into it. And I also really felt her because, like, I don't know, when I was reading it in my head, I was like, I know the dick is heavy. I can just feel it. Like, through the description, I'm like, this man has a huge dick. And lo and behold.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like flopping around, like, for sure.
It's like an arm.
And then she was like obsessed with his hands too. I was like,
that's a thing.
Yeah. Is it?
I have a lot of friends who are like, if a man has really big hands, I'm super duper into it.
Interesting. Is there like, they just think that means he has a big dick?
I think like there's just something about like a big hand just like holding. So this is what I hear. I can't confirm nor deny.
Okay, I'm gonna need some confirmation from listeners. Like, do you have a thing for hands? Like,
I would like to hear it.
Yeah, specifically like big hands.
I mean, like imagine like a big hand, just like.
Yeah, because then you get a nice hand. Well, and I'm a bigger girl, so I'm like, oh, I think a big hand would be nice. But
sounds amazing.
Yeah, but there were the amount of times that this woman is like staring at and fantasizing about this guy's hands. Yeah. I was like, well, that's new. I gotta say, I've never read that before. I've got a little excerpt about his hands because I did highlight it thinking, I'll have to ask Charia about that one. She said, yeah, sorry, I have a thing with hands. That was an understatement. She had a downright hand fetish. I was like, okay. Which, and you know what? Maybe that is what it is too. And I will say one of the things, there's a few things that they mention in this book that I think are typically what we would call taboo topics. I'm using like air quotes for this because I don't think of anything as taboo. But the fact that they do have a few discussions of fetish. Her friend, one of the friends she talks to, her and her husband run a BDSM club back in Los Angeles. And so they're very involved in like the kink community. And we have a pegging scene where Xeni pegs Mason and it's very hot. Love it.
With a purple dildo.
Oh my God, it's so good. Yeah. It's great. And then I can't love it enough too. I was like waiting for them to bring in like another woman and another man at the same time. I'm like, oh God, I just can imagine the amazing sex that these people are going to have in their lifetime. But, and then the other one, it's so subtle. It's just one quick sentence. But I thought this was so amazing that they just mentioned this. Rebekah Weatherspoon mentioned this, and it said, Xeni had been pregnant twice before, each time for a whole hot second, but she'd never reached the point where the woes of the third trimester were even close to a thing. And we don't really hear anything else about that. It's just mentioned because one of the, side characters is very, very pregnant and about to give birth at any moment. And, it's just a thought that crosses Xeni's mind. And I was like, oh my gosh, just the fact that we've mentioned what I'm assuming led to 2 abortions or miscarriages. Like we don't get any more details than that, but both of those are things that I feel like are not discussed enough, especially in something like romance where we have this idea that everything's supposed to be beautiful and idealistic.
Yeah. And she even gets into that later on in the book too, where she's talking to Mason about it.
Yeah.
And she even says like, we don't really ever talk about these things and we should.
Yeah.
It's like, because she was like, I realized that a lot of my friends have had abortions before and they're all just like shrugging it off. And it's like, it can be kind of a big deal and we should be safe and feel comfortable talking to each other about this stuff. So I thought that was really powerful too.
Yeah.
Like to have it in this kind of space, like in this romance world.
Yeah. And it was so like, casual.
Put a baby in me. It's like,
yeah. And it even ends when we have like, they have an epilogue at the end of the story, and people who listen to the podcast regularly know that I'm not a huge fan of epilogues because typically it's where we tie things up with a bow and we're like, yay, we're married and we have children and everything is peachy keen. But I have to say, I do love this epilogue because, she moves back to Los Angeles and he basically calls her and is like, hey, I'm coming to LA. He's a bassist, right? He plays guitar, and he comes and he's like, I'm going to be playing, in a band for a gig. And they get back together and realize, hey, let's try to make this work. It's not anything about like pledging our undying devotion for each other. It's let's try and make this relationship work. We cut to the epilogue. They're having hot ass sex while waiting for their parents to come back to visit them. I'm like, ooh, okay. And then, Mason acknowledges the fact that he and Xeni have had this conversation about how, they don't plan on having children together. She's like, I don't want kids. It's not something I see for us. And he's very cool with it. But God, just the fact, you mentioned it earlier, the conversations that they have, the fact that they're talking about things and, that it's avoiding all the argument, misunderstanding bullshit that we see in so many books and movies, and let alone real life. Yeah. That, oh God, I'm just like, conversations are sexy.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, you all are in your 30s and you know how to communicate?
Yeah. Oh, and they're in their 30s. I love that. I love that they're not 22. That's fantastic.
Yes.
So there's a lot to, this book that just, it's so many layers and they're so subtle. And I feel like it all, you can excuse the fact that there's not a lot of conflict because you're just getting to know these real people, and they're written and portrayed so well by Rebekah Weatherspoon that you're like, I could keep watching you and reading you after this book. Like, it's not a short book, but I flew through it.
It's a really fast read.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think the reason is because they're so lovable.
Yeah.
They're so cute.
Our little babies.
Yeah, they're cute alone. They're cute together. I have a few quotes I want to share with you before we, talk excerpts, of course. But there's just, it's so fun. If you haven't read a Rebekah Weatherspoon book before, definitely do yourself a favor and pick one up. She's one of those authors that anytime she releases a book, I usually immediately, one click it and add it to my Amazon queue because I've never been disappointed. So
she's a good writer.
Yeah. Did you like her style?
Yeah, I did.
I think you would like Rafe, let alone what else she's got out there. So, and she's got a lot.
Yeah, I was looking through. I was like, okay, girl,
you prolific for sure. But so let's see. I liked the phrase 10 out of 10 would fuck again. I'm like, I feel like that should be left on, and I feel like I've had this conversation with people, that should be left on the app that someone needs to create where you basically review people you've gone on dates with. So we don't have to. We need it. We need the Yelp for dating.
Yeah. And people always joke about, the Yelp reviews in their bios. It's like, I need a real one.
I need a real one. Yeah. I don't want this like joke one of like, my mom recommended me. No.
Like, fuck off.
Can I get your mom's number? I will call her.
Yes.
We will have a conversation. God. I also liked I Want You to Make Love to Me, like painfully slow, early 90s R&B video, silk shirts in the rain slow, with lots of kissing. Are you okay with that? Xeni didn't know if Boys to Men or Silk videos had made it over to Scotland, but it was worth a try. Oh my God. Just like the references, I mean, maybe it's because we grew up in the 90s, but I love a good Boys to Men reference.
Yeah, I'm like, that's so specific.
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense.
Right?
Yeah. It's like, I know exactly what kind of sex you're talking about.
Exactly, yeah. And I do love that there's a good variety of sex in here, too. Like, we get a little bit of everything. They talk about masturbation. Of course, there's the pegging. And, they have their, like, slow on the silk sheets Boys to Men sex. Yeah, it's great. It's a lot of really simple things that you think about, like, why don't we just talk about this? Like, it would just make things so much easier and happier.
God forbid that something made sense.
Oh, God, I know, for sure. I also love this, like, idea that she's a witch.
Yeah, they kind of just slipped that in there.
Yeah, like, it comes up a couple times, and not witch. Get your minds out of hocus pocus, people. Like, we're not talking like she's got a wand and everything, but I feel like this is like such a 2020, kind of thing where people are very into like astrology, obviously. People are very into kind of like, would you call like a witch more of like a spiritual kind of thing?
Yeah, because even in the book, she describes it more of just a spiritual connection to the moon. Into just things that are happening around them. And even in the end, she's like, every woman is a witch.
Yeah.
You just have to make the decision to, like, tap into it.
Yeah. It's going to sound so lame, but did you ever watch that movie when you were a kid, A Little Princess? Or The Little Princess?
I don't think I did.
Something like that. They just put it on Netflix, so of course I've watched it twice. But in that story, the girl is like raised in India. It takes place during, I think it's World War One. So like early 1900s. Mm-hmm. Is that when World War One happened?
Yeah.
God, I sound so uncultured.
1914 to 1917.
Yeah, I want to say it's World War One. I could be wrong. It could be World War Two, but I don't know. But anyway, they were living in India, and her father is British, and he's like a captain of the army. And so he has to go fight, and he takes her to like a boarding school in, I want to say they're in the States. Like, I think it's supposed to be like New York City. And while she's there, he supposedly gets killed in action. Doesn't really. Spoiler alert for anybody that hasn't seen A Little Princess. But it came out in like 93, 94. So you've missed, the spoiler alert window.
Yeah, this is a 25-year-old film.
But yeah, and they make, then the mean lady, Miss Minchin, makes her become like a servant at the house with the black girl, of course, who's like the other servant. And they become like best friends. Oh, it's so sweet. But there's a scene where she's like yelling at the lady, and she's like, I am a princess. All girls are, even if like they're not pretty, even if they're not rich, we are all princesses. And like the fact that your dad never told that to you when you were a girl, like that's bad. And I'm like, oh my God. So apparently we're all witches and we're all princesses. Ladies.
Just in case you needed the reminder.
God, have people not figured it out? We run the world. Or we should.
They don't want us to know.
Yeah. We're princesses and we're witches. Look out, fellas. It's coming. But yeah, anyway, back to the book. Oh gosh. Was there anything about the story, or the characters or anything that, maybe wasn't your favorite or like felt, out of place for you or anything like that?
I feel like the part about, is it Beverly? I can't remember her aunt's name. Mabel? What?
Sable. Sable. Yeah.
The fact about her aunt Sable actually being her birth mom.
Yeah.
Was just kind of like, here's this thing, and we're not going to really do anything with it.
Right. Like it was interesting. I feel you on this one. It's like I felt like there was almost too many layers at times where it felt like we had to give them each this very dramatic backstory. Like, I would have been satisfied with like, well, he has to pay off a debt and she, her aunt who was basically her mom and like, raised her, like she had a connection with, like passed away and that was hard for her, but then the fact that the mom was part of this like 60s, girl group and they have all this money and the group split up and she had her, but she gave her to her mom so she could go have a solo career and there's resentment between the whole family because of it, but she never knew about it. It was so much like, I almost felt like that was like another book in like a series that I haven't seen. Like, oh, was there a book about these women that I missed, Yeah. So I'm with you on that one for sure. Other than that though, I feel like, because I think my one thing was I also was like waiting for a little more to happen between Xeni and her mom.
Yeah.
Like there was like this sort of like strain in their relationship, I guess because of Sable being her actual mom and everything. That, but then they, Xeni spends most of the time ignoring her mom's calls and ignoring, her texts and everything. And then when they finally talk, it seems like it works itself out very easily. So it's again that thing of like there not being like that much conflict sort of thing. Yeah. That most of the time it's fine. Like it was, we kind of bought into it. I guess maybe I could have used a little more conflict between, Mason and Xeni too. Like I was kind of waiting for maybe there was going to be something that, kind of gave them the impression that like we can't be together. Like whether it's, we're both from different backgrounds or,
it was a little too easy.
Yeah, like, because, it really is that, he lives in New York, she lives in LA, but we know from the start that he's pretty transient. Like, he's not really attached to where he lives. He says he doesn't really want to go back to Scotland. Like, so I'm like, oh, well, there's nothing preventing him from leaving. And then at the same time, she says she's a kindergarten teacher and she's like, I'm not really invested in this career. I want to do something else. So I'm like, oh, so you don't have to stay there either. So yeah, even if it was just like he wanted to pay off this debt so he could go back to Scotland, like something that was just like a little more concrete to show me that he's actually sacrificing something because he wants to be with her.
Yes.
But it didn't really seem like either of them was like giving anything up. Like, which in one way is like refreshing. Like you shouldn't have to give up or make sacrifices. But at the same time, partnerships are about compromise, and working through things that aren't so easy. I don't think of relationships as easy, but this one was.
It was like, oh man, we don't know each other. Now we're married and we're both very rich. Well,
yeah, we're rich. We have really good sex. I like you. I'm attracted to you. We both don't have to be anywhere. We both don't really have any, thing holding us somewhere or to a certain job. I guess we could just be married, like, and keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah, like there was that instant attraction. They both liked each other's personalities. Right. It's like there needed to be some kind of
some sort of conflict. Yeah, something. And it doesn't have to be big. I don't need like some stupid thing about somebody pretending like they're cheating on someone or, and he does he does go back to Scotland, doesn't he? Like near the end. So I'm like, I feel like that was like maybe almost that, but still, I mean, I was like, not really. But so yeah, if anything's missing, basically what it boils down to is we really liked it. We like the characters, we like the story, we like the sexy times. But you know, we're both dark souls who like angst, and we wish they suffered a little bit more.
I need my romance to come with a big heaping plate of suffering.
Yes. Heaping.
Like overflowing.
Overflowing, yes. I like a good heaping portion.
I hope that's a word. Am I making that word up?
No, that's a word.
Okay, thank God.
Or I'll say like heaps of this, like heaps of pasta.
Yes.
You know? Angst, pasta, potato. So, okay, did you have a favorite segxerpt that you wanted to either share with the class or, you know, gently describe for the class? You're welcome to give us a reading. I have to say, again, this is not a moment where they're having sex, but when they're getting married and that bitch is like officiating their ceremony.
Deborah?
Yeah, terrible. They're getting married and he's putting the ring. I think this is when they're getting married, or else it's like when he's getting her a ring or what is it? I don't know. But he puts the ring on her finger and he like gets down on one knee to do it and everything to like make it like a little more legit. And this is what he says. He didn't say a word, just slid the rings onto her finger. They were a tiny bit loose, but Xeni didn't care. Mason stood, brushing his lips against her cheek before he whispered in her ear, I cannot wait until you fuck me in the ass later. Oh my God, if my husband said these things to me.
Yeah, that's a winner right there.
I think that'd be so fun. I'm all for it.
I would love to try a peg.
Me too.
Sounds like fun.
Me too. I think it'd be fun. Like, why not? You know? So if it makes you feel good, go for it. But I, of course, highlighted the pegging scene because it's one, long, it's fabulous. And then I want to say after she pegs him, he like, is it he fingers her or he puts a toy in her or something? It's something afterwards is really good for her too.
I think he like fist her.
Oh, that's right. That is right. No, I forgot about.
I had to read it a few times. But like, is that?
Yeah, and I have to tell you, Charia and I have been talking about recording this podcast for like a month now, and so I read this like a long time ago, and it's been a bit. But I did make a note of that because I was like, this is the first. It's not the first pegging scene I've ever read. And it's not the first one we've read for the podcast, so you should go back and listen. But it is the first fisting scene I've ever read, and I gotta tell you, that's something that I never really thought of as being sexy, but reading it happening here, I was like, okay, it can be sexy, like, if you're doing it right. So, yeah, no, that you're right, there is a fisting scene, but let me see. I found, here's an excerpt. This is the start of chapter 19, just in case people want to find it quickly. But this is a piece of the pegging scene, and I'll just go from here. It took a few moments, but Mason was able to find a good rhythm, fucking himself on the purple cock. A few strokes later, Xeni caught on. He held still, giving her the time she needed to adjust her legs, the room she needed for more leverage, and then she was back with him. He could feel her hips rising to meet his ass, feel every bit of effort as she tried to hit the perfect spot just inside of him. I should preface this by saying that, and Xeni actually mentions this, she was surprised by the way that they do the pegging, because he's on top of her. Like, it's interesting that she's like laying down, and it's almost like it's like woman being on top, like riding him, but he's the one riding her purple cock.
Yeah, and he's like this thick with two C's guy.
Yeah.
There's so many levels.
I was like, this is cool. I like this. The view in front of him was just as good, made him just as hard as the fucking itself. He bent over her, bracing his hands beside her shoulders, careful to keep his weight off her chest. His swollen cock slid back and forth just under the soft skin of her breasts. He moved faster, rocking back and forth, filling his ass over and over. Xeni urged him on, a hand stroking up his broad chest, curving around the side of his neck and back down again. He looked at the hand on his thigh as the light from the bathroom caught the diamonds on her ring. His eyes slid closed on their own as he worked the inches in and out and in and out again. Yeah. I love it. I love it.
I'm into it. Okay, I finally found one.
Ooh, girl, let's hear it.
But it's like soft and gentle. It's not really soft and gentle.
Is this the one where it's like, Boys to Men is playing and they're on the silk sheets?
No, I made sure not to do that.
Okay.
We already talked about it.
Okay.
It's in chapter... I have this on my fucking Kindle, so I don't really know what the exact page is, but it's the end of chapter 15.
Well, there you go. Maybe it's the marriage, like right after they get married.
This is
wedding night
after
sex?
they have their little Chinese takeout moment.
Oh,
right, super festive.
Because they're so married.
I know, right? So it's like, Xeni went to her knees and took the thick length of him in her mouth. She did.
You got the whole voice and everything. I love it. I love the effort you're putting in.
Thank you. She didn't love the flavor of the latex, but it was mixed with her own musk, which spurred her on to take as many inches of him as she could, and she wrapped her fingers around the rest. Later, she thought as he leaned forward and gripped the edge of the desk, feeling the condom. Later, she would definitely let him come in her mouth and all over her tits.
I have to say, kudos to Rebekah Weatherspoon for also including a condom in oral sex.
Yeah.
I feel like that's not something you see a lot of either in romance.
Yeah.
But, if this is somebody that you aren't really that familiar with and their sexual history, probably good. So,
yeah.
I like it. I like the safe sex. I like the conversations about safe sex.
Yeah, even when they first hooked up, he's like, I don't have any condoms. I was like, damn.
Yeah.
Guess we'll have to do hand stuff.
Yeah, I guess we're going to have to do something else.
Which is a very real conversation that everyone hopefully is having.
Yeah, instead of just the tip.
Yeah.
No, we don't play that game.
No.
Mm-mm.
Get your dirty dick away from me.
Yeah, dirty dick. Exactly.
Look.
I don't need it. Even if you are a thick Scotsman, I'm not here for the dirty dick.
And you know what's wild is that there are still people, grown ass people. It is 2020, and people be like, "Fuck with condoms on." Yes.
I like the face that went along with that. By the way, I wish everyone could have seen it.
Because cis men are dumb.
God, I know. It is bad. It is bad. And you know what's so funny? And my roommate and I have this conversation all the time, as two single women living in a thriving metropolis, that we're like, it's so sad. It really is. The things that a man, and we're talking about cis heterosexual men, have to do to get a woman to have sex with them, it's really not that much, but it needs to be quality.
Yes.
It's amazing. If you were to open the door for someone, and I'm not talking about you have to pay for everything or, hold doors open and bring us flowers and stuff. We don't need that. That's lovely, but
you should pay for everything. If you're coming to me, please pay.
Oh, is that where you fall on that, spectrum?
It's the least you could do.
But I'm talking about stuff like if I made dinner for somebody and I went to the bathroom and I came back and they were washing dishes.
Oh no, that's hot.
I would probably throw them down on the kitchen floor and make sweet, sweet Boys to Men love to them.
Silk shirt love.
Yeah. I'll make love to you. God, so good. Okay. Last thing, I'm going to ask you to give the book a few grades. We're taking it back to school.
Ooh.
So we're going to grade for heart, humor, and heat. And on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that it could possibly be. So when it comes to the heart of the story, what do you want to give it?
The heart, I will give the heart, I'll give it a 7.5.
Okay. 0.5, right in between. Why not an 8? What's that 0.5 holding you back?
I always have to give a 0.5 and I'm like, it's there, but it just, I'm a little short. It's I feel you, but I'm not 1,000. I would want to give you the A, but I don't know if you fully earned it. Not quite there.
Well, and to be fair, it is a romance, but it's more of a dating story than it is a love story. And that's not to say that, I'm pretty sure by the end of this book, they are falling in love. That's, but I don't know if we actually, do we ever get the words I love you out of either of them? I don't.
He says, I love you. But then her thought process was, she knew that he wasn't in love with her. But they had a connection that
exactly.
he created.
Which, and on the one hand, I very much appreciate the fact that these two people have this connection with each other tells me that this is the couple that when the book does end, I do expect them to continue dating and get together and be together forever. I really love their connection, which is why I'm going to give them an 8. But it is not like, I feel like the typical romance in that you're not going to end with, you know, them getting married, even though they are married, and, you know, pledging their undying love to each other, which, you know, sometimes seems uncalled for anyway. Yeah. So, but I am going to give it an 8 because I think they do have this amazing connection. How about the humor?
I mean, I never laughed out loud while reading it, but there were moments where I was like, that's cute.
Yeah.
I'll give it a 6.5.
Okay, I'll give it a 7. I think we're in the same ballpark. Like, it's not like a laugh out loud funny book, but I mean, I read you a few lines. There's a few lines that had me chuckling, like, I like that.
It was very much a 2019. Like, this is very modern.
Yeah, super modern. Like, this is something that I'm like, this, you know, is fresh. Yeah. Super fresh. And then the heat.
I will give the heat a 9.
Ooh.
I will give the heat a 9.
Yeah. I think, you know, I don't know. I'm like, I might even give it a full 10. Like, it's, and you know what? I don't give 10s to a lot of things, but like this, it has so much variety. There are different locations. Like, even in the epilogue, he's like fucking her and they're facing like the bathroom mirror. I'm just like, yeah, it has everything I want.
It hit every point.
There's pegging, there's toys, they talk about masturbation, like
there's consent. There's a lot of consent.
You know, they're both adventurous. They talk about what they want and don't want. Yeah, 10.
Yeah,
it's getting a 10 from me. Yeah.
I feel you.
So, this is, yeah. And obviously, so after reading this book, I'll ask you, you know, obviously I told you about Rafe, the buff male Manny, but, you know, whether you're thinking about that one or any other romance, are you thinking that maybe you will read more romance after this?
I would totally be down to be in a romance book club.
Ooh.
That would be so fun.
Well, you should read along with us. Do you think that's something I've talked about doing this for the podcast is like one book a month is like the book club book or something, and I think
that's doable.
Some sort of conversation. Okay, so maybe that's a topic that I'll revisit. And anybody listening, if that's something that appeals to you, you know, I know we announced the books that we'll be reading, you know, at the start of the month, but, you know, granted, that's a book a week, and some people don't read as quickly as I do. Yeah. But if we did, you know, for Boobies and Noobies, have a romance book club to include one book of our monthly reads to be the book that maybe we still have a podcast for, but that we have some sort of discussion about, or you could submit questions about, you know, maybe that's something we could do. So
that's cute. I like that.
If not, you can just join Charia and I on our private romance book club. Girl, I got plenty for you.
I'm looking over here. There's so many books in here, y'all. Like,
yeah, I'm surrounded. And you know what? God, there's so many coming out every day. It's insane. Like the amount that I have books on my shelf that, you know, I've been sent by like authors and publishers that don't come out until May. And I'm like, well, that's great, but I'm still working on stuff that came out in December 2019. Right. How is that going to happen?
Maybe we should do an exchange. You give me romance books and I'll give you good fanfics to read.
Ooh.
I have this idea of, there was this one time where I got drunk on my Instagram live and I read an excerpt from a fanfiction that I wrote when I was 11. Yes. So I was like, there are no podcasts where people like read fanfiction or like talk about fanfiction that I know of. Yeah. And I was like, oh, what if we picked like a cultural moment, like I would do a poll and someone would be like, my favorite movie is Face Off or whatever. Oh, I would watch Face Off and then I would I would write like a drabble or a one shot in that universe and then read it live.
Has anybody told you their favorite movie is Face Off?
No, but I think it's because they were talking about Face Off in this book. That was the first thing that came to my head.
Oh my God, that's funny. I will say the one fanfic podcast that I can think of offhand, at least, is called Suck My Fanfic. So I will say it is hosted by two men. So you could corner the market on
I never think about
women.
Men with.
Yeah, I know, right? But anyway, so that would be fun though. I also like this idea of like even like writers or anybody submitting stuff that's like that they wrote years ago and reading that aloud.
I will do it.
I've seen I forget which author it was. It was either Lucy Score or Catherine Nolan or Pippa Grant, because they're like 3 of the romance novelists that I follow on Facebook. And one of them had found something they had written years ago. It was like their novel from 7th grade. So, you know, it was like 12 pages long. And they read it on like a live video, and oh my God, the stuff that we write that we just forget about.
Well, this is the thing for me too, is because the reason why I'm a writer is because I started writing fan fiction when I was 11.
There you go.
And so I'll go back every few months and read my old fan fiction just to remind myself why I write. Because God. I get in these ruts.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I remember running home from the school bus to get to my laptop to like write.
I had to write about PETA.
Hello.
I'm not making fun of you. It's
no,
true.
It's okay. The PETA and the Hunger Games fan fiction was later. Back then, it was Fall Out Boy fan fiction.
Oh, of course it was.
Yeah.
Was there a lot of eyeliner?
Anyway. No, but you also realize too, like, I've basically written 8 books because these things are like 300 pages long, like 50 chapters.
Well, I think you've got a podcast ahead of you. I'm not sure what it is yet, but I think there's a lot of possibilities that I am happy to further explore with you.
Should it be a podcast or like a YouTube channel?
All of it. All of the above.
Like a video podcast?
Yeah, all of it. And then we can watch you while you drink and read things aloud from like the floor of your bedroom.
Oh God. I feel like it's so embarrassing, but I feel like I have to do it. I'm
invested. So, and I think a lot of people who listen to this would be too. God, you've got me sold. I'll listen. I'll watch. I'll do all of it.
Thanks. You can be my producer.
Yeah, I'll show up and hold the camera. And I'll drink while I do it, so the camera will also kind of tilt to the left a little bit. Oh, God. Well, I'm so glad that you, decided to dive back into romance with me tonight.
It was so fun.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me. And where can people find and follow you so they can, read up on all the amazing things that you're doing?
So you can find me on the gram. It's literally just my first name, at Charia, Charia. I have a Twitter, but it's really dark over there, so I don't recommend you follow me. But if you want to.
If you want the angst.
It's really dark. If you want to go over there, it's Charia. It's like at Charia, so it's CHAREEUH.
Ooh, okay.
Very fun.
Like you mix it up. Good.
Yeah, and it's funny. You'll know it's me because the name is Sharness Everbitch. So.
There you go. If you're like, I'm not sure which Charia it is, it's the one with, some Hunger Games reference. She's got, and maybe this will change, but she's got purple hair and beautiful purple nails to match. So, if that's not going to catch your eye, I mean, come on.
I'm kind of hard to find.
Can't pull you out of a lineup. Oh, gosh. Well, again, thank you. And, I look forward to this podcast of yours.
I have to do it now, don't I?
It has to happen. Whatever it is, video, podcast, drunk Tuesday, Facebook Live. I don't care. I'm there.
Oh, God.
Lots of things to talk about, but, we'll just wait to surprise everybody listening until it happens. And then you'll have a whole built-in fan base.
I love it. Well, thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah, of course. And we're going to hook up that romance book club for you.
Please.
Even if it's just the 2 of us and the dogs.
Period. I'm there.
Thanks so much for listening. Boobies and Noobies is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. You can follow Boobies and Noobies on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Boobies Podcast.